everybody. Welcome to our session today. As you are coming in to our Zoom session, just pay attention to the announcements and reminders. Remember that you want to stay muted. Consider wearing headphones if you need to prevent some of the background noise. Consider turning off your webcam if you're having any bandwidth, and use the chat bar to ask any questions. Also, take a minute right now to introduce yourselves through the chat. Let us know who you are and where you're from as we're waiting for people to get here so we can begin. We're just giving everybody a couple minutes to get settled. Today, we're going to be talking about the writing process and how to use different tools, digital and low tech, out there to interact with students in parts of the writing process, stages of the writing process. Today, you are working with me. My name is Laura Gabrion. I am a literacy consultant at Wayne Risa, and I'm joined by my colleague, Michelle Wagner, also a literacy consultant at Risa. We're really excited to have you here. We hope that some of the tools and tricks we give you are useful as you engage students this fall. For today, we'd like to talk about why employing the writing process is essential, regardless of the instructional mode. I want to also help you think about how important it is for you to be a writer as a teacher of writing. I want to end with exploring some of the ways that we can use tools, but also low-tech tools to interact with our students in all different stages of the writing process. So we're really excited again to have you here today. One thing that might be helpful to you, and Michelle is going to throw these links into the chat, we've created a reflection guide for you, and she's also going to throw the slide deck link into the chat as well. Both of these might be helpful to you as you follow along, but also might be a place for you to capture some of the resources mentioned, ways that you might plan to use those in the upcoming year. And I know as we prepare for the upcoming year, there's a lot of questions out there, a lot of uncertainty, but these are just good tools that you can use whether you're remote or face-to-face with your students. So the first thing that I want to impart to you is that the writing process is essential. The essential literacy practices have been adopted throughout the state. There was a group that came together called the GELN, early in the, I'd say early in 2016 as a response to the upcoming third grade reading law. And so what they did is they collaborated with other groups throughout the state to create the Literacy Essentials. The Literacy Essentials are a suite of documents that are geared towards kids of all ages, really. We have 0 to 3, preschool or pre-K, K through 3, 4, 5, and 6, 12. We also have school-wide and center-wide essential literacy practices, as well as coaching essential practices. So you've got at literacyessentials.org quite a suite of documents that can guide you in. The beauty of it is it's just 10 simple practices, maybe not so simple sometimes, but 10 practices that you can employ for K3, pre-K, and 4-5 every day. When we work with the 6-12 students, because you're working in shorter class settings, we look at those as 10 practices that you would employ across a unit. So when we think about why employing the writing process is essential, we look at our K-12 essential literacy practices, and we know that it is mentioned in number 6, which is devoted to instruction in writing, that we want to give our students from kindergarten to 3rd grade instruction in writing processes and strategies, especially those involving research, planning, revising, and editing. So let's go on with our 4-5. Thank you for your patience. It mentions that we need explicit instruction and guided practice using our writing strategies for planning, drafting, revising, and editing. So both 3 and 4-5 are looking at ways to incorporate the writing process as we teach writing. When we get to the 6-12, we want to reinforce that that we're going to use these processes: pre-writing, planning, drafting, revising, providing feedback in these different stages, editing, and publishing. But what we want to remember is that this is a recursive process. This isn't something that we expect our students to do from start to finish. It's not a stepwise process, it's a cycle. Beyond the literacy essentials, we know from many, many years of research that this is the way to go when we're teaching writing. Way before, probably the 1920s, 1950s, we had a product-only process when teaching writing. So students would prompt during class, they would have to write on that prompt, and at the end of that class period, at the end of whatever the structure of the class was. There were many researchers in the mid 60s and early 70s that started to research, well, what do professional writers do when they're writing? They don't just sit down and write an entire book from start to finish without stopping and turn it into their publisher. They go through processes, and those processes involve pre-writing, thinking about the topic at hand, gathering some information in formal and informal ways, drafting, revising, getting feedback, editing, polishing. And sometimes, because of the recursive nature of the writing process, we're back to the drawing board. Maybe we found that we needed a little more research, so now we're back to inventing or gathering information. But we've got to be flexible in this process. The beauty of the writing process is that it naturally allows for feedback throughout all of the stages of it. So if we kind of use our opportunities to have our students partake in the stages of the writing process in our classes on a regular basis, we have more and more of an opportunity to talk to them about their writing throughout the stages of the writing process. So what I want to stress to you is just that it's fluid. Again, it's recursive and fluid. We want to, I guess, think about scaffolding as something that we slowly but surely take away from them. So we set up those scaffolds of the writing process, but as they become more comfortable doing things or accomplishing different parts of the stages of the writing process, we can pull back a little bit. We also want to model for them that this is a messy process. It's not easy. We scribble out things, cross out things. Maybe it's not as visible when we use digital platforms like Google Docs or Microsoft Word. Maybe we're doing a little bit of erasing and retyping, but we can still show them those processes as we go through them. It's also, I think, really important right beside them. I know I'm stealing Kittle and Gallagher's words, but we want to think about the fact that published writers are what illustrates the final product. When they read a book or an article or even a brochure or a pamphlet or a website, that is a finished product. Along the way, when we're writing along with them, we show them the process, that it's a scaffolded approach with that process, that along the way we develop our skills, the different things that we think are important about writing, such as punctuation, which is a lower end, or the standard English conventions. We also want those higher order goals that we have for our students, that includes like organization, focus, unity, cohesion, following along with the parameters of a particular genre. So those are all things that we want to make sure that they understand too. And then finally, that it's difficult to start and finish all in one moment in one setting. So what does the refinement of that product entail? We can show them our notebook nudges. We can show them that sometimes we have an idea that we really can't go any further with, so we set it aside. We also show them how we can use something like a writing notebook or a journal to go back to things, to come back to certain ideas, expand them, revise them, rewrite them. And in this way, we show them that all writers struggle. Connie Kittle says, "You are the most important writer in the room." And that's really something that's aligned with the National Writing Project's core principle, that we have to be writers first, which sometimes maybe we even have some discomfort with our skill level when it comes to writing. So I've kind of ended on the note that writing is a struggle and writing can be messy. But what I want you to do when we go into breakout rooms is simply think about, how do you impart the joy of writing to your students? In what ways do you show them that writing can also be something that they look forward to, that they embrace, that they're excited about? So I just want you to think for a minute as I put you into rooms. And I also want to tell you, if for any reason you come back out into the main room for reasons of connectivity or something like that, often it's difficult for me to remember, because I'm randomly placing you into breakout rooms, which room you started in. So as you move into your breakout room, just take note of what that breakout room number is, and then I can easily put you back with the group you started to talk with, in case for any reason you pop out of the breakout room and end up back in the main room. So I'm going to go ahead and send you into those rooms. Pay attention to the breakout room you've been assigned to, and I'll see you in about 5 minutes. Okay, it looks like we have everybody back, I believe. We're going to try using the raise hand icon to share with the group if you would like to do that, or you're always welcome to add your thoughts to the chat. So again, I want you to think about, how do you impart the joy of writing to your students? And if you're willing to share, you'll use the raise hand icon by clicking on participants. You'll choose over to the left-hand side the raise hand icon, and you'll just click on it. And then that will show your raised hand in the participants list. So Michelle will be able to call on a couple of people to share with us. So anyone who's willing to share, just go ahead and try to use that icon, or as I said, feel free to add any of your thoughts to the chat.
Laura, it looks like Deanna might be willing to share.
Deanna, if you just want to unmute, go ahead and share with the group.
One thing that I shared with the small group is, you know, kids love to eat, and as long as we don't have any allergies, I would always do a bubblegum how-to story. And so we'd start out by, you know, carefully unwrapping the gum, and then thinking about every little step we were taking as we were chewing the gum and getting ready to blow a bubble. And then I would do a multi-paragraph. We would do it together. I would model it. And so they were excited to have candy. So that brings them joy. And it was a lot of fun to do that.
I love that idea, Deanna. And it makes me laugh because I think it's almost like Pavlov, right? They see the ding, time to write. So it's a conditioned response. I love it. I noticed in the chat that someone asked about notebook nudges. It's a phrase that I got from a person that I would go to writing workshops. She was our facilitator. And what she would do is come up with something that would just get our thoughts, our kind of our mental juices, our writing juices running. So we would think of things like, you know, she would maybe put a quote up, or a question, or a poem, or something that would just start that process. And then we would use it as a model, or we'd answer the question. So it was just a way to nudge us into our writing every morning. And then later we could look back over those notebook nudges and think about, oh, kind of thought this was a good idea. Maybe I could write a little more about it. So again, it was somebody else's phrase. Her name is Kathleen Reddy-Bukovich, and I've used it since then. I should ask her permission probably. And I see that Sean added that he or she, sorry, I'm not sure, has used puppets, an elephant named Ellie. So that's such a great idea to just get them thinking about ways to associate something fun with the writing process, because a lot of times there's vulnerability and kids worry about, you know, how they write. Maybe they feel uncomfortable writing, or nervous about writing, or they're not successful with writing. So this is a way to impart some of that joy. And I know there's others that are popping up, but one beautiful thing about Zoom is we can save the chat. So as others of you have added to the chat, we will make that available to you so that you can read through some of those ideas. We want to engage students in this process of writing, and there, again, are a lot of tools out there. The first stage of the writing process is planning, and this is just probably the tip of the iceberg of all of the different tools that are out there. So what I thought I would do today, because we're only together for an hour, is I would take us through the writing process stages. I'll give you suggestions for more than one tool that you could use in that process. But each time we'll zoom in on one, just so that you'll see that a little bit up close, and you'll be able to maybe think about using that particular tool. One thing that we've talked about in a lot of our sessions is there's that urgency to try everything or use a whole bunch of different tools when we're doing things with our students. But we do know that just like we struggle with technology, case in point, my issues earlier today, our students do too. And then our younger students are going to have to rely heavily on their parents. Use the writing process in a way, I guess what I mean to say is that we use those tools in a way that's going to push forward their learning and their growth as writers in that particular process and beyond. So what you see in the planning stage is you can use things like Jamboard, Padlet, Wakelet, Google Slides, the good old-fashioned composition notebook. You can use virtual whiteboards. You can also use physical whiteboards. You can have kids just simply use the whiteboard that's available in their house. They can even substitute that with a piece of paper that they hold up. You can use Google Docs, Book Creator. Really what you're trying to do is think of an empty canvas. Where can they create in the writing process? So the thing that I would like to show you today, the particular tool, is called Wakelet. And you get to it by just simply going to wakelet.com. And what happens when you create your own Wakelet is that you have an opportunity to create different collections. And in that collection, you can do a lot of different things. But for example, if I wanted to do something about research in the writing process or on the writing process, I could make that my new collection by simply clicking on the green plus sign. I can add a cover image, I can add a title to it, I can link many different things, many different resources to it, links themselves, I can type in text, I can link to my resources in Google Drive, videos, PDFs of articles, whatever it is that I want to do, but I can use this as a collection of information about my topic as I plan. Now for our younger writers, we can also think about just having them add pictures and text so that they've got a collection of information before they begin to write, and one little place that they can go back to and look that over. And then finally, you can see that you're able, once you start to put information into your Wakelet, you can organize it. You can have a grid or a list view, and you can share that with others. So you can share the link to your Wakelet with other people. So your students would be able to share that with you, for example, or you could have them share it with other students if they're collaboratively working on planning a particular writing project. When it comes to drafting, similarly, we've got a lot of tools out there. We can go low tech. We can look at things like our composition notebook, or just writing in a spiral notebook. We can take it into the tech realm by using things like Google Docs. We can use other similar programs like OmniWriter or Draft or Evernote. In OneDrive, we can use the Microsoft Suite, Microsoft Word, for example. But what I want to zoom in on today is using the document camera in Zoom. As you notice, when we're doing a presentation, we screen share. So what you can do to use the document camera, so either one, you can share a writing piece with a student in either a one-on-one conference setting, a whole class conference setting, or a small group conference setting is you would click on new share. You would be able to choose the iPhone, iPad option instead of your screen. And then you would need to obviously have your phone hooked up to your computer, but you would be able to make sure that you're in the, that the Wi-Fi setting is correct. You simply go to screen mirroring. In an iPhone, that's where you swipe up to those extra tools like your flashlight and do not disturb, etc. And then you simply tap your Zoom account. And then what you would be able to do is, you will see your iPhone, in your screen share. So you would be able to see all of your little different applications that you've got on your iPhone. But if you go to photos, you would be able to have taken a photo in advance of students writing, and you'd be able to talk to them about that. So in that draft phase, you have that opportunity for formative feedback, but it doesn't necessarily have to be in a digital platform, Google Docs. It could actually be in a platform, a low-tech platform. The student has just simply written out that intro to first draft or just their first paragraph or whatever it is, and then you can share it and talk about it in that way. So it's a great way to interact in the drafting stage with your students. The next thing we think about when we think about the writing process is opportunities for teacher and peer reviews. So once you've got that draft done, you want to give an opportunity to students to interact with their peers, to have an opportunity for their peers to review their writing, or you also may want an opportunity to review that draft and give them some feedback before they go on to the final copy. I would actually say more than may want to. As a teacher, we usually want to interact at some point during the drafting process, and we have to make decisions about what part and how much, but we definitely want to guide them before they move on to the revision stage. So again, we have a lot of tools out there that we can use to give students an opportunity to interact with their peers and or to provide them feedback ourselves. We have Flipgrid, which is a wonderful way to make a short video. Student can read a fellow student's paper and create just a quick video with some feedback, save that video, and then they form a grid. So they're interacting with each other. You can even set up separate grids for pairs of students so that they will just interact with one other student around the writing that they're doing at that time. You can use Screencastify. You can give students a screencast of the paper itself and comments that you've made. You can use Vocaroo to give students audio feedback. You can definitely use the comments feature within something like Google Docs or Microsoft Word to give students feedback, or to give them an opportunity for peers to give feedback to peers. Finally, you can use whatever discussion board platform your particular LMS has available. So for example, in Google Classroom, it would be the question feature. In other platforms such as, and other learning management systems such as Schoology, it would be a discussion forum or a discussion board. So let's zoom in on discussion boards. And the way that I've used those in the past, like I said, in Google Classroom, you would be looking for the question icon. And then in the directions, you would give students the specific directions you want to have them use to interact around the writing. For those of you who popped in a couple of days ago when we talked about feedback, maybe you want to give them questions that they can look at in regards to their peers' paper that are aligned with the genre of that particular piece. So if it's a story that they have characters and plot that has a rising action, falling action, and a resolution, maybe you're looking for a clear setting, but you'll decide what those questions are. You want to post those questions, and then what the students can do is post their draft, look for their partner, and answer those questions about their partner's draft. And there's a variety of different ways that they can upload their responses, their draft, in something like Google Classroom, for example, they can use the comment feature and simply link their Google document with the correct sharing capabilities so that their peer can look at the paper, the Google document, and make some comments back. And maybe the student, for example, if we're talking about our first pair, John and Jessica, John has uploaded the link to his Google document. Jessica uploads a different Google document link that gives her answers to those questions. Or maybe she puts those into the comment feature itself. In other platforms, you can upload the document itself, and you can have students use things like a text box to answer the questions that you've posed. It could be questions. It could also be things like 2 stars and a wish, or one strength and one weakness. Whatever it is that you want to help guide the students in interacting with each other and giving solid feedback to each other about their drafts. When we get revising and polishing a piece, we can think of a lot of different things. We can have students create a revision plan. We can have phone conversations with students guiding their revisions. We can do a Zoom conference, individual Zoom conferences, or small group Zoom conferences with students around their writing. We can use the comments feature to post questions about something a student has said and get them to think about ways that they're going to revise. What I'd like to zoom in on is the revision plans. The revision plans are just one way that you can get students to think about how he or she will address issues in their paper as they're revising. And one of the things that I've done, depending on the age group that I'm working with, is thinking about how to move them away from some of those surface level corrections to their paper to more of those global issues. So rather than them having them think about as an issue or concern the punctuation or the use of commas in their whole paper, then instead they think about the organization, or they think about something genre specific. So if it's a fantasy, maybe one of the requirements, the learning targets, was to add talking animals. So they're not sure they did that correctly. And so what they would do is they would list 3 to 5 concerns that they have, their plan for making those corrections, and what the benefit to their paper would be. And then that's also something that you could interact with the students around. You can look at their revision plan, talk to them, and since you most likely have read either all or parts of their draft, you can think about what you would add to it, or where you agree, or what some of your suggestions might be around their revision decisions. So then we get to presenting. We want students to carry writing all the way forward to a polished product. So there, again, are a lot of ways that we can do this. Anything that is collaborative and offers students an opportunity to either upload or present a piece, things like, again, Flipgrid. A student can simply read the finished product, and we can put them in that grid, and different students can listen to those recorded readings as well as comment. Flipgrid offers you a comment feature. We can use Google Sites. We can have a way that all of the students' work is uploaded, and we can make it a gallery view. We can use Google Slides similarly. We can use Book Creator. One of the teachers that I've been working with had an end of the year project during the closure. It was, I believe, called their COVID diary. And it was, every single page was an image and writing by a different student. So it was a collaborative book that they put together. You can also have the traditional author's chair. So what I'd like to zoom in on is the author's chair. You can, in Zoom, create a virtual background. Many of you probably already know that. And if you can see one of mine, it's Tiger King. So you know how I spent some of my pandemic time. All right, so one thing we could do is create the author's chair for students to use as their virtual background while they're presenting their piece. In Zoom, what you can do is you can find that image that you want as a virtual background, first of all. You might need to, as shown, crop it so that it works for your purpose. And in the stop video section of your toolbar, you'll just use the little upward angle. You'll click on that. That'll allow you to choose a virtual background. And then once you've gotten into the screen that allows you to choose it, you'll click the plus sign and you can upload something like the author's chair. You could share this particular image with all of your students and then say, whenever you are the author, don't forget to change, or you're the author in the author's chair, don't forget to change your virtual background so we can see you presenting from that royal chair. One thing that we don't want to forget about is writing assessment, because again, as I said, the beauty of the writing process is that it allows us to interact all of the time throughout the entire set of stages with our students. So we can give them that formative feedback while they're gathering information, while they're pre-writing, drafting, revising. We want to make sure we let those students lead that discussion. We want to start with something like, what are you thinking about your piece right now? What are your concerns? How can I help you with that? And you give them an opportunity to guide that. It requires us to listen, but it also requires us to record keep and think about our pacing, especially because we have quite a few students to get around to. We want to make sure, as Grant Wiggins has indicated, that we give timely feedback, that it's specific and not vague, that our students understand the feedback and that it's actionable so that they can actually do something with what we've provided in terms of feedback. And because we modeled that, that makes those peer review processes even better. We will get our students to provide peers with timely, specific, actionable feedback. Once we get to the summative stage, we want to think about what are the performance goals? What do we want to, what do we hope they master in this particular writing exercise or writing assignment? We want to think about how that rubric is aligned with those learning targets. And we also want to think about providing exemplars so that our students know what we're looking for in terms of models. Finally, you're going to need a place to house all of this. So as you start to collect all of this wonderful writing from your students, you're going to want to think about, do you want a Google folder system? Do you want Google Sites? Would you house it in your LMS in some way that students have access to it, whether it's in Google Classroom or Schoology, because you want them to value the process they went through. You want to teach them how to share these different repositories so that you will know how to get to their writing. You will know how to give them the necessary feedback. And it also gives you an opportunity in many ways to share beyond the classroom itself into the home. They will be able to share this writing with their parents once they learn, and their family members once they learn how to not only share, but house that all of the writing that they're doing in all of these stages. All right, so we're back to breakout room time. I know a lot has been going on in the chat and I want to honor that, but I'm going to let that happen after we get back from breakout rooms. And I appreciate that you'll be patient for a minute with that. I know that Michelle is going to share the chat with the group. I think she already has. So as we continue to discuss in the chat, we'll make sure at the very end we share that with all of you. So I'm going to send you back into those breakout rooms for just a little over 5 minutes. What I'd like you to do is share one new thing that you're going to try with your students, or something that has been particularly successful in the past. I think we have just about everybody back. So let's try again what we did before. If you want to raise your hand and share out by unmuting, go ahead and use that raise hand icon by clicking on participants and looking over to the far left. But if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, I welcome that as well, because we are going to definitely save the chat. It's been requested by a couple of you. I know Michelle is snagging everything that comes into the chat into the Google Docs so that the one that she shared earlier will be the most complete one, even at the very end of our session. So would anybody like to share about a new technique or approach that you're going to use to engage your students in the writing process this fall, or something that you've used before, we would love to hear it.
Laura, one thing that I'm really excited to try out is that author's chair. I know that's a simple idea, but how fun.
And while you guys were in the breakout session, we did look, and there is a Chrome extension for Google Meet to set a virtual background. It didn't have a lot of high reviews, but maybe people just haven't stumbled onto it yet. But I also do see a dear friend, Jessica Madden, who has an idea. Jessica, do you want to unmute and share?
Sure, thank you. I'm saying this out loud, so I make sure I do it. I love all the ideas about having students share their writings with one another, because in the, the brick classroom, we do that a lot. I've used writing groups and lots of peer feedback, but in the spring when we went virtual, student interaction amongst each other, for me, it was like, it just dropped off. So using the different ways for students to give feedback, I'll definitely try the Flipgrid, and I'm looking at ways for students to share their polished products more too. So thank you.
Great. Would anyone else like to share? And I see in the chat the mention of Google Docs. And don't forget, we talked about it Tuesday for those of you who were with us on Tuesday, but you can definitely use the comments feature in multiple ways in Google Docs. So you could add an audio comment through a Vocaroo link, or you could use a Screencastify link and interact with them in a little bit of a different way in those comments. Well, I know I'm trying. I went to Michelle's session and Heather's session yesterday about wait time, but we are getting very close to the end of our session. What we would love for you to do is provide us with some feedback. This little survey only takes about 5 minutes to complete. You can either use the QR code, or Michelle will put the tiny URL in the chat. It's very, like I said, very easy to do, but I think what's most important to us is what you're anticipating you might need, because we want to continue to offer these 1-hour snippets throughout the school year so that you can log on and listen and interact and discuss, just glean some new ideas, but that you'll also be able to go back to the recordings if that's something that just fits better into your schedule. So if you've got an opportunity, we would love to hear the feedback that you're offering to us. Also, we have more sessions. So throughout the month of August, we've got this 3 to 4 slot where we will be covering a variety of different topics that we have thought about that might help based on the conversations we've had with many of you over the closure and into the summer. But we welcome, again, through that feedback, some new ideas that might serve you better, things that we haven't thought of ourselves. So we would love to have you. The link is in the presentation, but please feel free. And as Michelle's been so knowledgeable, but to say each time, or I don't know if knowledgeable is my right word, but well, of course she's knowledgeable. That's not what I meant. But what I mean is that if you cannot attend these, it's great if you register, because then you get the broadcast information the next day, which includes the link to the video, as well as the link to the resources, which often includes the slide deck itself. So just wanted to put that out there for you too. Finally, as we get closer to closing, I just wanted to thank you so much for being along with us today. I really enjoyed seeing your ideas in the chat and hearing some of them aloud. I also want you to remember that from 4 to 4:30, if you have any additional questions about the content or facilitating this content with others, please feel free to stay on. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.